afternoon and welcome to your Construction Safety Association Manitoba's 2025 virtual webinar series. My name is Megan Story and I am the Training and Development Manager of the Construction Safety Association of Manitoba, and we are proud to be recognized as your premier and trusted source for safety and health information, resources, training, and core certification. Today's virtual webinar is an example of how we are striving to provide you with practical and relevant information to help you with accident prevention in your workplace. For those of you who know CSAM, quite simply, our answer is yes. How can we help? We will have the answers to your safety questions, or we will find the answer with the help of our other qualified resources and partners in safety and health. Today, I am pleased to introduce Iqbal Brar. In today's webinar, we'll explore how AI tools like ChatGPT can help safety professionals create engaging, scenario-based meetings that influence behavior and drive real safety performance. Questions will be answered at the end of Iqbal's presentation, so please add your questions in the chat at any time throughout the webinar. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and a copy of Iqbal's presentation will be made available. Iqbal, the screen is yours.
Let me just that. And just to confirm, are you able to see the screen? Megan, that's all good?
It's all good.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Just wanted to say good afternoon, folks. My name is Iqbal Brar, and I'll be your facilitator for today's meeting. And what we're going to chat about today is AI-powered safety meetings. So just to start with, I thought I'd give you a little bit of information about myself, my professional career, and why I'm talking about this subject, and then we'll jump into the actual content here. So as mentioned, my name is Iqbal Brar. Everyone just calls me Iq. I'm the president and principal consultant at IQ Safety Solutions. So I've been in health and safety for about 12 years now. I've spent most of my career, safety career in the power line utility sector, where I was a regional safety manager overseeing billion-dollar infrastructure projects for central and eastern Canada. So after about 2.5 years ago, I opened up IQ Safety Solutions, and now we help serve small, medium, large size companies in industries such as construction and manufacturing. What we do is we essentially can help a company become their health and safety department, help them out with developing their programs, conducting audits, serious incident investigations, and for a lot of companies, we're their trusted partner for helping them out with core and C-core certification. Now, on the AI side of things, I've been using AI since 2022. So that's really when ChatGPT became available to the public. And really, I started kind of tinkering around with it at that point to see what were some of the ways that it could be used to help me out with my career, help me out with the tasks that we have to do and the various things that come up as health and safety professionals or in construction in general. And since then, I can honestly say that AI is now part of my daily workflows. So whether it's compiling emails, whether it's bouncing ideas off of it to come up with various strategies and various presentations, etc., it is something that I do use on a daily basis. It is something that I try and stay apprised of. So I'm signed up to a few different newsletters, kind of tell me about what's going on in AI, what are some new technologies, which ones are interesting for my work and what I do. So I try and stay on top of these things and try and find ways that it can help me out professionally and from the health and safety side especially. So with that, I want to jump into kind of what we'll be going over here. So firstly, I just want to thank everyone for taking the time out of their schedules to attend the session. Appreciate your time. And what we want to do here is I want to chat about, what is the purpose of safety meetings? A big component of will be, how can we use AI, generative AI specifically, to help build engaging content? I do want to make sure that this is hands-on. So because of the format that we have, chat is enabled on this. And what I want to do is throughout the presentation, there'll be times where I'll ask for some feedback. I may also ask for you folks to actually jump in on creating a prompt, sharing the results of that prompt, and then using that as part of our discussion as well. So that'll be part of the presentation today, making sure that we actually go through it. It's funny, I did a presentation, a different one on AI a couple of years ago, and somebody had come to me after the presentation and said that, you know what is ChatGPT? Is it a person? Is it a robot? So what I took from that is that we need to make sure that when talking about these things, there's all sorts of different exposure levels to these. So I want to make sure that you get a chance to play around with it, kind of show what you're able to come up with it as well. And then hopefully the end goal here will be that there's actually some strategies that you can take away from here, some things that you can implement, and with the goal of making those safety meetings that we're doing more engaging, more meaningful, and really fulfilling their purpose of hopefully shifting the culture within your organization. So with that, what safety meetings have become? So I want to start with a question, and if you can just provide answers with a thumbs up if you feel that that's the case. Has anybody here sat through a safety meeting and retained almost nothing? Has that ever happened to anyone? Like get a couple thumbs ups. And if I see no thumbs up, then you folks are attending fantastic safety meetings, and I'm really glad to hear. Oh, look at that. Everyone's attending fantastic safety meetings. There we go. We got a couple. So, and it's not to take away from the meetings or anything like that, but sometimes these meetings, what they become is more of a checkbox approach where, the information isn't relative, isn't related to what the workers are doing. Sometimes it could be boring based on, what that format of that meeting is. And a lot of the time, what ends up happening too is there's just too much information in a meeting. So there we go. We got a few more thumbs up. So I can tell you, when I was a safety advisor in the field, I was definitely guilty of the too much information trap. So I used to think, oh wow, I can fill this PowerPoint up with tons of information, and everyone's going to be so amazed by how much safety information I can give them. But in reality, what I was doing was I was overloading people with information, right? So these things do happen. They happen. I've been somebody who did that as well. So that's something that we have challenges with. And then also on the other side of it, a lot of it becomes compliance driven versus what we're actually looking for, which is culture driven. And when I say compliance driven, we know that in legislation it says that we have to have a safety meeting, at least on a construction site with 5 or more people. That needs to be 30 minutes. If it's biweekly, no less than 15 minutes. So sometimes it's more so to get that done as opposed to, the purpose of it, which is taking that time to discuss those things that are happening on site or within the organization that really can hopefully drive some changes in behaviors, or at least give people information to be able to reconsider some of the unsafe practices that they're doing. Now, when we talk about why safety meetings should be more, like I said, right, I think we need to shift our minds from, safety meetings as just an opportunity to give information to opportunities to really start influencing behavior. And what I mean by that is making sure that, there's some actionable outcomes that come out of it. We have a call to action that comes out of it. We start to see, fewer incidents. We start to see improved reporting, better hazard awareness, whatever those behaviors are that we're trying to push for within that safety meeting. That's what we want to get to. And we want to make sure that, that requirement in legislation, it's not there as a requirement because they just thought this is let's make folks do safety meetings for the sake of doing safety meetings. They recognize that in construction, there are a fair amount of hazards, there are a fair amount of risks. There's enough things that come up from a week to week basis that they should be discussed, they should be used as a learning opportunity, as a training opportunity, and there should be outcomes from them. So we want to make sure that we're following what that spirit of that legislation is, and building that safety culture through not only our safety meetings but using the safety meetings as a mechanism for changing that culture as well, for having better engagement, for having better conversations. Now, I mentioned it before, there's lots of different things that can get in the way of good safety meetings. As I mentioned, information overload. If we're talking about too many things at once, it's very hard for individuals to absorb all of that, right? It's very hard for individuals to retain multiple calls to action, multiple behaviors that we're trying to change. So sometimes we just need to be mindful of how much information is appropriate for the setting that you have, right? And I'm not trying to dissuade anyone from providing more information. I'm just saying we got to be mindful of how much is too much for the audience. Time constraints can be a challenge as well, right? When it comes to how much time we're given to conduct the safety meetings. At a minimum, it says that they must be 15 minutes. Doesn't mean that that's the maximum either, right? You can always add more if there's more information that needs to be given, but definitely, anything less than that becomes a challenge in terms of being able to get information across. If we're being rushed, if we're being asked to present information and not given the time to do it, that's going to cause challenges from a retention, from engagement, from a even perspective of just being able to go through that information. And then we start getting back into that information overload because we're saying a lot of things in a short period of time. I know I've had it in my career where, I had a supervisor stand up throughout the safety meeting, 5 minutes into it, kind of make a motion of, hey, we got to speed this up and ask like, hey, when is this going to be done? So things like that undermine these types of culture changes that we're going for. It actually, and it builds towards the other side of the culture, which is we don't have time for safety. We don't have time for meaningful discussions. And that was a conversation that the supervisor and I had after that meeting, was that that's uncalled for and really doesn't push what we should be doing here, which is being mindful of giving the time for folks to be able to engage and giving the time for folks to be able to communicate what those safety challenges are that they're having. If we do the same type of meeting every single time, that can cause, we talked about it before, it could cause boredom, right? If every time I'm coming up there and I'm going to lecture you for 15 minutes and, that's basically the gist of it, there's little engagement, there's no feedback, there's no opportunity or encouragement for individuals to participate, nor do they feel comfortable participating. It's going to get pretty challenging to have people to influence behaviors in that type of setting. So changing the structure of the meeting, it's a big part of what we'll chat about today, trying to make it more engaging. But that's something that definitely I've seen in my career. I've seen, jumping into client safety meetings and things like that can cause some kind of pushback on the meaningfulness of safety meetings. And as mentioned in a couple different components of it, if it's not relevant, if you're talking about something that has nothing to do with what the folks are actually doing at that time, you're going to have a really tough time expecting people to listen and actually participate in those meetings. So you got to make sure that they're relevant. The more engagement that you can get out of them, and I understand that. It is challenging to get engagement. It is challenging to ask people to, provide their feedback. So that's where, with the use of AI, the hope is that if we can include some additional activities, we can make it relevant to what's going on, that we can pull some of those folks in that wouldn't typically participate and get them to, start seeing these as opportunities to learn and opportunities to, like I said, shift that culture. Now, I just want to use an example here, and what I'm going to ask you to do is I just want you to listen to me in terms of I'm going to give you 15 words, and I don't want you to write these words down, but what I want you to do is I just want you to listen to these words, and I'm going to ask you to repeat them to me in the same order. So don't write it down, but I'm going to slowly say them. These are the 15 words: apple, truck, chair, window, fish, mountain, paper, pencil, moon, car, jacket, orange, snow, phone, and hammer. Can somebody tell me what the first word, if you could type it in the chat, what was the first word that I said? Apple? Great. What about the first two words? Fantastic. Give me the first four words. So it's getting a little bit slower on the responses. I am getting some responses, and then I lost some folks there. But what I'm trying to show you here is that I told you what to look for. Just so everyone knows, it was apple, truck, chair, and window. And I could keep going, and the more that I keep asking you to give me back, the more that I ask you to, do it in the order that I gave it to you, what I'm going to see is less and less people are going to be able to get that. And what I'm trying to show there is that, when I'm telling you to be mindful of what I'm saying, when I'm telling you what I'm going to ask you to do, it's still challenging to remember that information. And I recognize this isn't the same as us doing a meeting. I'm asking you to remember words. But really, the what I'm trying to point out there is the more information that I give you, the harder it's going to be for me to expect you to remember all those things, especially if it's, things like processes and procedures and stuff like that that needs to be followed in particular orders, or that has maybe some complex instructions to it. So, one of the things that makes for meaningful meetings is if you firstly, you always want to make sure that you put proper planning into it. And part of this AI integration that we're talking about is to help, give you that time to be able to make these, or sorry, use that time that you have, but use it more efficiently to make these things that, are a little bit more meaningful. So it'll save you some time, but it won't take away from anything when it comes to the actual content of it. In reality, if we're using it appropriate, it should actually add to it. So one suggestion is that you focus on one idea per meeting, right? So what I mean by that is it doesn't mean that you can't talk about various things, the incidents that have happened, the other things that are important to talk about, but really for that one idea or that one call to action, if there's something there that's more important than the rest of them, if there's something that you really need to get out, that really needs to be implemented, that really needs to be, adopted by the folks on that job site or wherever, tying that into the meeting, asking for that specific behavior, talking about where that is at that specific job site, and then providing that one clear call to action. That's really a good way to, to not drown out some of that information overload, or, get in situations where we're not getting as much as we're expecting, but it may unfortunately be because we're asking a lot out of one forum, which maybe doesn't allow enough time for that to happen. So, an example here I talk about is if we see that we're having slips, as winter's coming here, there's a certain pathway that, or sorry, all the pathways that we take, they're always slippery. If we talk about throughout the meeting and our one call to action in that meeting is that everybody is responsible for spreading, sand at the end of the shift. That's one action, right? That's one requirement that we're asking of them. It's one thing that, we're hoping that they'll be able to remember and be able to accomplish. And if they don't, at least the person beside them hopefully will. But that's just an example of, how we might want to focus our meetings on one call to action as opposed to multiple calls. And I'm not saying it's always possible. I'm not saying it's always going to work. There may be several things that need to be touched on. I'm just saying for those really impactful things that you want to make sure are really being absorbed, it may make sense to have a safety meeting specifically to those things, even if it means having additional meetings throughout your week versus the one meeting where maybe you want to go over all that general information such as incidents, etc. Now, why better safety meetings matter? There's statistics associated with this, right? So there has been studies that have shown that if you have interactive meetings, what ends up happening is that they're 3 times more effective than lectures. So if you get people involved, if you get them thinking, if you get them doing, they're going to be more likely to retain that information. And same thing in those same interactive meetings, individuals who, where the study did was an interactive meeting versus a non-interactive meeting, what they found was that 74% more were likely to outperform their peers in learning. So those individuals that had those interactive meetings, they were more likely to retain much more information than those individuals who, sat through a lecture. Once again, I'm not saying there's not a time and a place for those lecture types of meetings, but the statistics speaks for themselves that wherever you can make it interactive, you're going to get better retention, better learning from it. Knowledge checks are fantastic, right? If there's if we can incorporate those into it. And sometimes, as I'm going to mention throughout this presentation, sometimes we don't have the time to be able to do so, right? And that's where AI is going to come in place, is to help us build those knowledge checks, help us make sure that workers, are understanding the material that we're giving, all really within a few keystrokes. And then the content side of things, if we're using relevant photos and videos, you're likely to get double the engagement. And I'm going to go through that here in a couple slides, is that it's not always possible to get, to Google images that actually are relevant to the work that you're doing. That's where AI is going to come in, is that if you start to get good with, those prompts to make pictures and things like that, now we're starting to be able to, create pictures and relevant pictures to what's going on much at a much higher rate than just trying to find them off of Google. So It also showed that they're 68% more likely to follow rules when tailored training is provided. So, if you give them something that's more specific to the actual task that they're doing versus taking something more generic, taking something more general, you're gonna have better retention of that information. And once again, AI is where we're able to make those scenarios that we may want to go over very specific to the work that you're doing, very specific to the PPE that you're wearing, the conditions of the job site that you have. So all of these things, there's if we can make safety meetings better, these are the types of things that we can get out of them. We can get better, we can get more effective, we can get more folks following those things that we're asking out of them. It does take a little bit more effort, but now we have something there that actually helps us out with creating that same level with actually quite a significant drop in the effort and time needed versus traditionally having to find these things, put these things together, and some of those other things that come with that. Now, I've been kind of alluding to it throughout, but you know, where AI comes into this, I think a good place to kind of start with is what is AI? And AI is a technology that lets computers, learn from data and make decision or do tasks that normally need human thinking. So they can recognize patterns, answer questions, solve problems, all these types of things, that once were, mainly the area of humans to do. And there's different types of AI. There's things like computer vision, which uses, pictures and videos for AI to take data from there and give outputs. But the one that we're typically exposed to, and I know the one that I'm using more often than anything else is generative AI, which is a type of artificial intelligence that can create new content like text, images, and presentations based on patterns it's learned from massive amounts of data. So it doesn't just find information. What it does, it actually generates useful outputs. Things like, what we'll talk about today, scenarios, visual aids, um, and meeting scripts. So that's kind of where AI starts to pop in for us. Is it becomes that source for us to get some assistance from. And how it can help us out, like I mentioned, talking about meetings, meeting content and slides, it can help you put this stuff together. And I'll talk about it in the next slide in regards to risks. It doesn't mean that it's going to do all this stuff on its own. It doesn't mean that, you can just put it in there, whatever it comes up with, you're going to use that. But you're going to find that one of the primary things that I use it for is bouncing ideas back and forth, right? So trying to come up with content that's engaging. It might give me a few suggestions. Maybe out of five, there's one that I like. I want to kind of go back and forth on how we can make it that it's going to be relevant until I'm comfortable with it, until I feel like it captures my voice, it captures the types of content that I'm looking to build out there. That's really how it's used. It's not put it in, walk away, and you have yourself a presentation, but it will help a lot with kind of helping you brainstorm on that content and slides. The engagement side of it is huge as well. Asking it specifically, how can we make this more engaging? And same thing, it'll come up with multiple suggestions for you. You find the ones that work for you. As you get more, from general, you always want to go to more specific. You tell it, what is the setting that you're in? I'm going to be doing the presentation on a PowerPoint. I'm going to be standing in front of an audience. We're going to be sitting inside of an office trailer, so on and so forth. The more specific you get, the more specific the suggestions it'll give you. But then those, there's typically a couple nuggets in there that are very helpful for, good engagement ideas. The visual aid side of it, it's getting better and better. I'll show you some examples as we jump into kind of the AI side of things. But um, you know, to create pictures that are relevant to the work that you're doing, to be able to create images that make folks, really see what we're trying to teach them, whether that's what should be the PPE here, what are the hazards in this situation, if we're trying to write a permit, how would you write your permit based on this? That area of it is really, it ties into the engagement side of things, but it ties into really that content that you're creating and that buy-in that you get from crews based on those those visual images, or sorry, those images that you're able to show, get them engaged, get them sucked in, get them really visualizing those things that you're trying to teach them, where it's not always available off of Google, it's not always available, off of pictures of you taking in the field. Maybe you just didn't have time to do that. And then ultimately, efficiency is a big one here, right? So efficiency comes with being able to do these things just at high as a level, with just as much of your voice in it, but with much less time taken for it. So this efficiency should never take over in terms of, yeah, we're just pumping them out, pumping out 5 safety meetings a day. That's not what we're going for here. We're going for, if it took you 2 hours typically to put a safety meeting together on your own previously, through working with AI, through working with, its ability to put together meeting minutes based on your suggestions, slide content, visual aids, you start to see that efficiency really take away from that time, or sorry, slim that time down. And then that ultimately allows you to do more of those things that you're going to impact the culture within your organization. So the efficiency side of it is to give you some of that time back while not taking away from the content that you're trying to show. And in a lot of cases, actually improving upon that content and that culture changing meeting that you're trying to have. Now, as I mentioned, there are risks with AI, right? I can tell you with my experience, AI does lie, right? AI makes things up. AI will put information in there that isn't correct. So you need to verify everything that you're going to be putting out there. You need to verify anything that you're going to take from it and that you're going to share with other individuals. So if something doesn't look right in there, you're right to question it. You're right to, ask it, where did you get this information? Tell me the source where this information came from. I've gone as far as, going through those sources, looking through the websites and finding that sometimes it's not pulling the right information. So I say that as a risk of something that you want to be mindful of. It is getting better. Every iteration of it. Now they're at ChatGPT 5. It's getting better at being more accurate, but it still doesn't mean that it's there yet that you can just type it and go. Like I said before, you really got to be mindful, especially the more the more complex the situation is, the more is on state the higher the stakes are. So things like legislation, things like very complex user manuals and things like that. You want to make sure that you're actually comparing it to what the legislation says, what those manuals say, just to make sure that nothing was missed or no interpretations were made that don't actually align with those higher risk or kind of those higher categories of things that you want to be mindful of. Certain companies, you have various confidentiality rules, right? You have various information that you don't want to be sharing. So be mindful of what you put in there. Be mindful that, that data, when it comes to things like safety meetings and general stuff like that, a lot of that stuff isn't sensitive. But if you're talking about specifics that really your company doesn't want shared with anyone else, doesn't want shared with the AI, things like that, you got to be mindful of that and just kind of make sure that you're mindful of that. And I see a comment that says, City of Winnipeg has implemented Gov AI. A lot of companies are doing that. A lot of companies are actually owning their own AI. They make their own, they give it their own rules, they give it their own parameters that it won't share information outside of that. So that's a great way to actually be able to combat some of those issues is you use your own. And I mentioned this before, but I'm going to keep mentioning it, is that it is a creative partner, not a decision maker, right? So it's a great person to bounce, and I say person, but obviously, AI is a great thing to bounce ideas off of. It's great for, when you have, writers call it writer's block. You can have those types of things for putting together safety meetings, for putting together various documents, but having someone to go back and forth with, having something that you've kind of trained to say, this is what I do, this is where I work, these are the types of things and the hazards that are relevant to us. Now, based on that, let's come up with some ideas. It's fantastic, but don't let it get carried away in terms of whatever it puts together is going to be fantastic. A lot of times it isn't relevant to what you folks do. A lot of times you got to put a bit more work into it and make sure that it's just giving you ideas, not everything. Now, I'll give you a real use case, and there's a ton of these, but near miss, I know near miss reporting is always a challenge. As an independent auditor for CSAM as well, this is an area that we see a lot of companies struggle with is near misses. So one of our clients, what they wanted to do was, they found that the near miss reporting was fairly stagnant, an issue that we see quite a bit in a lot of places. And they felt like, supervisors felt like they were saying the same thing over and over again. They were having the same meetings, telling people it's important, trying to get people to talk about those things, but not really getting anywhere with it. So what we had done was, we had put together some images, or sorry, we had initially put together a meeting based on near misses. So we got, as part of that meeting, we got it to tell us what can we do what are some things we can do to make this meeting more engaging. Telling them about, some near misses that happen within the company, relating them to different job sites that they had, what types of near misses can happen on those job sites, asking it for that discussion-based format, putting a strong call to action for it. And what it ended up coming up with, one of the activities that we had in there, just to jump forward, is it was actually for a framing crew. And the what they wanted to do is get the framers a little bit more involved in spotting these things using a fairly simple scenario, and then giving them their near miss forms to show them how simple it was to fill these things out. So as opposed to just telling folks, hey, I want you to, do near misses. This is why they're important. Yes, can you give me some examples of it? Pulling out kind of the same example. Somebody walked by a ladder, they dropped a hammer. That was a near miss. What we got them to do here was, okay, here's your near miss form. Here's an image with a few near misses on it. Tell us some of those near misses. Now, once we got those near misses from them, once we got them understanding, that their form is very easy to fill out, it takes a couple minutes. Then we got them to discuss, okay, well, what's the purpose of reporting this near miss? What could have happened to the individual who's standing on the top? What could have happened to the individual, who's on the top of the ladder? So just a little bit more engagement in that conversation, more engagement in that, that more visual things for them to rely on. And then them actually, filling out the paperwork, doing that hands-on learning, to get them to, understand that this is not a heavy lift. These are things that you see. And then ultimately, what's the value of it? We stopped somebody from potentially tipping over. Stories were shared. I saw a guy on top of a ladder. It tipped over when he was standing on the top. So it really made it more meaningful in that situation. And what we found was that near miss reporting increased for a 3-month period. So, these things don't last forever. We need to, there needs to be campaigns, there needs to be continuous re-encouragement on these things. You need to watch who's doing it, who's not, all there's a whole bunch of things to getting these types of things built into the culture and maintain in the culture. But it was a really good result for something that had been gone over multiple times with little to no success. Using AI to kind of generate a little bit more in terms of that meeting, generate a fun little activity that, we did it up on the board, but really what you could do too is print those out, give them to everyone, get them to circle, all those types of things. We got a lot of positive feedback from that meeting. And then also the result which we were looking for, are we going to see an increase in reporting? Actually ended up being for a couple months, which is honestly more than what I'd seen previously, and kind of more than we expected. So just that's kind of, one example of how this can be used to address some of those challenges that you might be having. Now, what I'd like you folks to do and how I'd like to do this is, I'll just show you here in a second what ChatGPT looks like. But what I want you to do is I want you to use this example prompt, which says, create a 10-minute safety meeting about whatever topic you want to put in here. If you want to put ladders, you want to put musculoskeletal injuries, you want to put whatever, that's up to you, about so-and-so safety with a real-world story, 2 discussion questions, and 1 call to action. So I'll show you what that actually means here in terms of, what ChatGPT looks like, just in case somebody hasn't seen it. So here you see chatgpt.com. Now, once again, I use ChatGPT. It doesn't mean that it's the only one to use. The person gave the example of Gov AI. There's Copilot, there's Claude, there's Perplexity, there's Gemini. There is a ton of different AIs. This is just the one that I use. It's the one I'm most familiar with. But this is basically what the interface is. When you sign in, and you can do it without a sign in as well, if you just go on to chatgpt.com at this time. I don't think it'll actually prompt you to sign in. I'm fairly certain you can do it without it. If it does, it's fairly easy to put an account together. You don't have to pay for it. It does give you a free account, which gives quite a bit of flexibility in terms of how many times you can make prompts. But basically, what we're doing here is just literally what I said. So if I say create a 10-minute safety meeting about musculoskeletal safety, with a real world story, two discussion questions, and one call to action. So that's literally all I'm doing here. Now, the more context they give it, the better, but just for the sake of this example, I just want you to see kind of what it might come up with. So it's going to take a second to kind of think through what it wants to put together. So it's thinking for longer for a better answer. That's great. But what I want you folks to do is, as I'm going through this, if you can do the same thing on your end, if you can open up ChatGPT, come up with a subject that you want it to go through, and then what I'll ask you to do is somebody, if they can, once they get that outline, whatever it generates, if one or if a couple of you can copy and paste that into the chat, I'd love to read what it does. But as you see, it's starting to, give us some information. Here's a ready to run 10-minute safety. You can read right from your phone or print as a toolbox talk. So it's really breaking it down into how long it's going to take, and I can change this to tell it to make this into a PowerPoint presentation, etc. So it's giving us a quick definition, the objective, a real world story. Now, if I gave it an example, it'd give us an electrician. Jay spent 2 weeks installing conduit overhead on a scissor lift. Pipe was light, but his hands were above shoulder height. So it's giving us a story, talks about Jay reporting it. The takeaway here is small loads and awkward posture equals plus time equals injury. Here's some red flags to watch out for. So as you see, it's generating a fairly robust outline for us here, right? And this is just based on some really, really basic information that I gave it. Had I given it more information based on what tasks you folks are doing, what types of lifting you're doing, how heavy that is. So it's going to start to create that content. But what I'd like you to do, like I said, is if you can try that out, write that prompt out, take a few minutes, and just let me know what pops up on your. Oh, interesting. It won't let me paste into the chat. So that is. Oh, awesome. Okay. So we have someone here, Stefan from Stefan Homes. It says the duration. It gives you an opening 1 minute. Good morning, everyone. Fantastic. They happen slowly over time. So it might just be that you can't copy all of it, I'm guessing is what's happening here. But I appreciate you kind of sharing. But here's a real life example. Let me tell you about Mike, our concrete installer. Mike's been on the job for 15 years. One day, instead of asking for help, he decided to carry two 50-pound cement bags across uneven ground. Halfway there, he twisted to drop them, felt a sharp pain in his lower back, and that was it. So fantastic, right? You're starting to get, it's starting to come up. Now, like I said, that one's making up a story. If you have a story, you would just insert that there and then it would make that meeting minutes around it. But like I said, based on what we actually wanted to see out of this, so here it's kind of broken it up like this. If I went into this and I said, I want you to make this into I want you to make this into notes for PowerPoint slides with, slide title, and slide information, and speaker notes. So you can actually it'll start to change kind of what format it wants to give it to you, or the format that you want to receive it in. I see another one here coming through on ladders, right? So, ladders are one of the most common tools on the job site. Real world story. It talks about a painter's fall, suffered a broken wrist. So it's starting to, it's a fair amount of information. Like I said, so yeah, Copilot asked if I wanted to make this a slide deck. So ChatGPT will do the same thing. It'll actually put it right into a PowerPoint for you, right? So here now it's starting to break it down into slide number one. This is the title slide. So when I talk about efficiency, now once again, I wouldn't just take this and flap it into a slide deck and say that we're good to go, that this is perfect and this is meaningful for me. I would make sure that the real world story, I would want to make sure that it actually reflects something that happens at the job site. But here now it's giving us, on the slide what those notes are going to be. It's giving the speaker their notes about it. So it's really starting to build that information out for you. And like I said, I would never just give it this amount of information, but it's just more so that you can see how how intuitive this stuff is in terms of being able to take that and kind of run with it. Now, the more that I give it, So if I change this up just to kind of give you, so it says, do you want me to turn this into a PowerPoint? Now, some of these things are features on some of these things are features for paid. I don't know if that'll do that with the free one. But it's just, there's a ton of things that it can do. But let's just say for as an example, I have a safe job procedure here. So I have my manual material handling safe job procedure. And as part of that, I wanted to take, the assessing the risk side of it. And I say that I need this covered in it. So what I would do here is I would say, I want you to update the meeting to include this from our safe work practice. And I've just kind of thrown that in there. And so now when I talk about making it relevant and I talk about making it, meaningful and specific to what you folks are doing, these meetings can be made, these meetings can literally be made from the existing content that you have within your health and safety manual. Now, sometimes you'll get, something went wrong, there's an error there, all good. It might just end up doing the same thing it did before. These things do happen with it, but ultimately what it would do here, once it starts going up and running, and I can just copy and paste it again if it's being slow. Yeah, so now it's telling me that, it's now integrated this into it. And unfortunately, I got a little bit antsy there and I pressed it, so it didn't do what it was supposed to do. But if I try it again, but basically what I'm trying to show you here is that now what we're doing is taking from that general information, if we start drilling down and we start giving it more information, specific to what we're doing, specific from our safe work practices and things like that, it'll start to make that meeting content or that safe work practice content into things right from our health and safety program. So sometimes it's challenging to get people to review safe work practices, to get them to pay attention to safe work practices, even know what they are. Well, if we can start making those, building meetings that have engagement in them and things like that, well, maybe we start to see some of that engagement go up for them. So that's kind of what I wanted to show on that is, and it'll keep going. I got it on a higher version of ChatGPT, so it's being a little bit slower, but ultimately, it took 21 seconds to come up with this. So it's funny how quickly we start to get antsy for 21 seconds, where this would have taken hours in the past, right? So it'll keep going and it'll just kind of keep making that safe work practice incorporated one now. But you kind of get an idea of what it's doing. It's taking that information, now it's drilling down more. We're starting to narrow the focus. If I wanted to pull other information that I wanted to be in there, I would start to do that. Now, we already went through this, so I'll jump over to the next one. But here, generating a visual. So here I gave it a prompt. I said, create an image of a construction worker misusing a ladder on a rainy day, include poor footwear, bad ladder angle, and tripping hazards. Now, as you see, it's not perfect, right? You see there's some weird stuff here. There's something going on here. There's some weird thing going on there, but it did all right, right? It captured some of the stuff. It captured a tripping hazard. It may have captured the angle possibly. But what you're seeing is that I didn't give it enough information to make this picture more specific. So what I'll typically do with this is if I put on that prompt, if I put, this is what I want, create me an image of a construction worker, so on and so forth. At the end of it, I'll put, ask me questions to help you make the image. Why I do that is because if I tell it to ask me questions, it has so much data that it's pulling from. It's going to ask me things like, do you want this to be a realistic picture? Do you want this to be a cartoon picture? What type of ladder do you want it to be? An A-frame, an extension ladder, and on it'll go to a point where now you're giving it better information. And what you're getting from it in return is you're getting a better picture from it. So what I mean by that is you start to get more detailed pictures. So this one was a hazard spotting, a hazard spotting challenge. So this was based on giving it a better prompt to say, I want you to make a hazard spotting challenge. I want you to, ask me any questions that you need. It asked me, do you want it to be realistic? Do you want it to be a heavy construction site? What type of hazards do you want to show on it? Do you want, slips and trips or poor housekeeping, so on and so forth. So you really start to get better information, and where we can start using images and things like before and after comparisons, topic related visuals, incident visuals, recreation videos. That's going to be coming really soon here. You'll actually be able to make videos of, things like incidents, but we're probably still about 6 months to a year out for that. But you're going to see that become part of these meetings as well, is actually being able to show without having people recreate it, what happened in an incident. Now, I'm going to skip ahead because I want to make sure we're being mindful of time, but I just wanted to show you some of the images. These are all AI images that were created for various meetings, right? So you have what PPE is missing here. This one was for a drug and alcohol related one. It's not easy to find content for drug and alcohol related, it's HR and all that kind of stuff you don't want to get yourself in trouble for. But when doing a training session on what are things to look for, what are some signs and symptoms, well, an AI image of Buddy being hammered, beside a piece of equipment, a can there, those are things that we can use to generate conversation and complete a drug and alcohol suspicion list, right? Or this guy here who looks shifty, who has a vape pen in his pocket. Once again, this person isn't real, right? This is all AI generated images. It's me just giving it enough information that it's creating good images. When I talked about before is getting people to create habits. Well, this was done for rolling out a hot work permit. Okay, let's pull out your hot work permits. What are the issues in here? Are there any combustibles in here? Is the right PPE being worn? All those types of things. Is there a fire extinguisher? So showing them the poor behavior or the poor scene or a relevant scene, and then asking them to fill out paperwork so that we're actually doing, as opposed to asking folks to do something and then possibly them not doing it for many months and unfortunately falling out of some of those habits. You have AI, you can have ones for equipment inspections. It doesn't, we don't always have time to go out and do equipment inspections as part of the meeting, but can we give people those equipment inspection checklist books and get them to look at, pictures of what might be wrong on equipment? Well, what's wrong here? Fill out the documentation. Obviously, the tires here are in extremely bad shape. We have some sort of damage to the railing. All things that, once again, I didn't have access to these pictures. These pictures aren't easy to come across on the internet, but with a few prompts going back and forth, now these like really high quality pictures are part of the conversation. Now, what I did want to show you here is the next one is what I'll do, and I'll just show you on my end, since when it turns into, when it comes to safety meetings and making them engaging, making those knowledge checks, if we just put in here, so now it's done, it's created all of these slides. If I just ask it, I want you to create a quiz based on the safety meeting, which should be true and false, and multiple choice questions. And I'm not doing proper English here, but make it 10 questions, 10 questions, put the answers at the bottom. So once again, can we come up with quizzes ourselves? 100%. If I sit there and I go through the content and I want to, really drill down on what those things are and what are those quiz questions that I want it to ask, I can do that. That's no problem. But from an efficiency perspective, if it's already helped me create the content, it knows what that content is. Why can't I get it to help me out with actually creating an MSI safety quiz based on the actual content that we have? And when it comes to, even things like your core points, where it asks in section 8, do you have ways of confirming competency and things like that? And even for a company's due diligence, these are great ways to show that individuals, we're actually able to learn from those meetings and retain that information. Now, like I said, for whatever reason, it's going really slow on my end. This isn't typically how long it takes. It usually is very quick. Might just be my internet connection. I'm not too sure. Maybe I got too much stuff on the go. But what it'll end up doing here is that it'll actually end up making a quiz for us that has those components. So if somebody can, since mine is taking a little bit, I'll come back to it in a second. Based on that safety meeting that you created, if somebody can just type this in, based on the safety meeting I created, create a 5-question multiple choice quiz with answers. If somebody can do that and copy that into the chat, that would be appreciated. And I'll just go back to it just to see. And yeah, like I said, I don't know why but okay, now it's picking up, but here we go, true or false. MSIs are usually caused by one major lift or accident. That's going to be false. It has multiple choice. Which of the following best describes an MSI? You're going to have, some answers there. And on it's going to go. It's going to make, and ultimately what I can do with this is I can just, once again, after reviewing it and making sure that I'm good with the content, what I can do is I can just copy and paste this to a Word document. And then I I can print this out for the safety meeting. So at the end of the safety meeting, to make sure that people understood it, make sure people were listening, I can give them a quiz and just check to see, was that information transferred. Uh, If anyone has an example, feel free to share it. If not, not a big deal. So, it keeps going. And this is all, if we went through the totality of the meeting, it would actually show that these are all components from there. It's just pulling information. So it's once again, just making sure that that information that you went over, did people listen? Were they able to actually come up with, or sorry, were they able to actually answer these questions? So you can answer, you can put fill in the blanks. You can really make it whatever you want, right? But it just shows when we talk about engagement, when we talk about getting people to confirm that knowledge transfer, when we talk about making them more relevant, that's the things that we're doing with this. And when we talk about um, and just like I said, I'm having some issues on my end, but when we talk about efficiency, this is, we've been talking now specifically on this. We've been talking about this for maybe 10, 15 minutes, and we potentially have a presentation, we potentially have an image had we gone through the motions, and potentially we have a quiz to go with it. Right? And I see somebody here, here's for the latter one. You should inspect the ladder before each use to check for damage, true or false. Right. So all questions based on that meeting that they put together. Now, just to end off, I want to make sure there's a few minutes to chat with. What we want to make sure is we want to focus on what are those behaviors that we want employees to do. So we saw some examples of equipment inspections. We want them to we want them to inspect equipment. We want to make sure that we're building that behavior in them that, hey, look, here's how you physically do it. Here's how the form works. Here's some examples of things. And when we talk about, the AI component to it, it makes it sharper, right? It makes it more focused. It makes it more relevant. It makes it more engaging. And ultimately, it makes it quicker. Not to take away once again from the content and that review process, but even after I would review all of that and put that together, it's going to be put together a lot better than I would have just doing it on my own. So, I'll leave you with some final thoughts here. And basically, like I said from the beginning, right? These aren't just checkbox things that we're doing for the sake of doing. If we use these appropriately, if we do safety meetings the way that they're supposed to be done, there's an honest opinion, or sorry, there's an honest opportunity for culture to change and for behavior to change, right? But we got to make sure that we're, making them relevant, we're making them engaging, we're making them visually, appealing. And ultimately, it doesn't come down to AI is going to replace without me putting all those prompts in, without me, telling it what to do, saying what's relevant to my workplace, without all those types of things. I don't think, it's not replacing you. It won't work without you. But ultimately, you need to vet all those things so that it doesn't become a situation where you're just putting all that stuff in there and feeling like, well, this is going to take my job. No, you need to be the person who's vetting that. You need the person who's giving it, that expertise that you bring into the picture. And once again, a really good way if you have something that you really want to make sure that you're pushing, put one powerful idea, one powerful image, one powerful action per meeting, and really that's going to push for getting that behavior front and center and hopefully shifted to what you're looking for. So what I'll ask the audience here to do is, if you get an opportunity, find create a safety meeting outline with it. Try and create a hazard scenario or some sort of image generated visual aid and see how that works. See if you get better engagement. Ask it to, come up with ideas for engagement and just see how that works for you and see if there's any improvement either from engagement, efficiency, or otherwise perspective, or even just the professionalism of what you put together. So folks, I know we're coming up to the hour here. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. My name is Iqbal Brar. If you ever need any help or information, feel free to give me a shout. Feel free to call, email. I'm always open to answering questions, even on the AI side or otherwise. Megan, that's all I had.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Iqbal. Much appreciated. There are a few questions, I believe, in the chat. I'm not sure if you want to take a few minutes to answer those. One from Deb. She says, I use ChatGPT to help develop safe work procedures. I like the idea of PowerPoint presentations and developing quizzes for the employee. I believe this will help to get more engagement. So just a statement from Deb. Thank you. Sally asks, what about after the next 10 years? Do you have any insight on that, Iqbal?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think any of us know. It's really it's moving at such a quick pace that like some of these things that I don't think people thought would be here as quickly as they are, even these like AI generated videos and things like that, they're coming pretty quickly. So I think what you'll see in the next 10 years is you'll see a lot more, a lot more powerful types of training that you'll see. You'll see a lot, VR and AR is going to be part of the normal things that we do. So I don't know exactly where we'll be in 10 years, but I can tell you this is just kind of the beginning of it. The content that we'll be able to do, the information that we'll be able to share, and how we make it more meaningful. I can't even imagine what that's going to look like yet, but I know it'll be towards the right direction in terms of amplifying those messages that we're trying to send.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Iqbal. Before everyone signs off, I just want to once again thank you, Iqbal, for this great presentation. And thank you all for attending this afternoon to our webinar. We very much appreciate your involvement and your participation today. I just also want to just raise your attention to the screen. I'm going to be posting here just an opportunity for all of you to share your comments and feedback on what your thoughts are about our webinar and ideas of how we might be able to do other webinars in the future. So if you could take the time to use that QR code on your screen, that would be much appreciated. I think it should be right there now in front of you. So thank you again. We will be planning more of these in the future. So if you haven't already connected with us via our CSAM news, please do so. That's our way to get connected with all things CSAM, and we will be able to provide you with all the information that you're looking for through our website or connecting with us here at our office. So thank you again, much appreciated, and we will talk to you all soon. Okay,
Thanks, everyone.
great
Thank
day.
you very much. Bye.
Bye.